It was a sunny afternoon at a neighborhood park in the heart of America. Laughter echoed from the playground, until it didn't. A little black girl approached the play area, excited to join in. But instead of smiles, she was met with cold stares and a quiet message that spoke louder than words. "You're not welcome here." What happened next, when her father arrived, no one saw coming. Her eyes dropped to the mulch beneath her sneakers, confusion clouding her face. She wasn't crying, but she didn't need to. Her silence screamed enough. From across the park, her father saw it. The shift in her posture. The way the other parents looked past her like she wasn't there. He walked over, not rushed, not angry. Calm, steady. But every step carried the weight of generations. He crouched beside his daughter, asked her what happened. She pointed quietly toward the playground. He stood up. What he did next wasn't loud, but it shook the air around them. One by one, people stopped what they were doing. Conversations stalled. Even the kids paused, sensing something important was unfolding. And in that moment, right there in the middle of monkey bars and swing sets, he taught everyone watching a lesson they'd never forget. But it wasn't with yelling. It wasn't with fists. It was with something far stronger. He looked around, not with rage, but with a quiet authority that made people uncomfortable in all the right ways. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a folding chair. Without a word, he placed it at the edge of the playground, sat down, crossed one leg over the other, and waited. His daughter stood next to him, holding his hand. Minutes passed. Some parents whispered. A few gathered their kids and left. But he didn't flinch. He wasn't just making a point, he was drawing a line in the sand. Then, something unexpected happened. A little boy, one of the kids who'd been playing, broke away from the crowd. He walked over to the girl and said, "Wanna play?" She looked up at her dad. He nodded. She smiled. They ran toward the slide together. And just like that, the tension cracked. Not with a speech, but with a child's simple act of kindness. Still, her father didn't move. He kept sitting, eyes steady, not just guarding his daughter, but standing watch for something bigger. He knew the moment wasn't over. Because this wasn't just about a playground. This was about every space where someone like his daughter is told, without words, that they don't belong. And he wasn't leaving. Not yet. The game picked up slowly. One kid turned into 3, then 5. Soon, the laughter returned to the playground. Not because anything was fixed, but because a barrier had been broken quietly, bravely. But not everyone was ready to let it go. A woman in a designer jacket, arms crossed tight against her chest, marched over to the father. Her voice was low, but sharp. "She doesn't go here," she said, nodding toward the girl. "This is for residents only." He looked up at her calmly. "My tax dollars helped build this playground," he replied. "My daughter is a resident of this country, of this community, and she has every right to be here." The woman scoffed and stepped back. She wasn't expecting logic. She wasn't expecting grace either. Just then, another parent approached. This time, a man holding a coffee cup and a toddler on his hip. "She's fine," he said, gesturing to the girl. "Let the kids play. That's what this place is for." Others started to nod. It was subtle, but it mattered. The shift from silence to solidarity. The father didn't smile. Not yet. He stayed seated, eyes scanning the park, not for threats, but for change. Because he'd been here before. Maybe not this park, not this town, but this moment, over and over again. And each time, he knew the cost of walking away too soon. So he stayed, not to protest, to protect, to witness, to remind everyone that justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just sits down and refuses to leave. Time moved slowly, like the sun knew something important was unfolding and didn't want to rush it. The girl climbed higher now, her curls bouncing as she laughed, really laughed, for the first time that day. Her dad finally stood, brushing the dust from his jeans, and walked to the edge of the playground. Not to leave, just to shift his view, to see her joy in full light. The woman in the designer jacket had retreated to a bench, arms still crossed, but now unsure, eyes flicking between the father and the growing group of parents quietly supporting him. And then came the sound no one expected. Applause. It wasn't loud or organized, just a few hands clapping, a soft ripple of recognition, a quiet thank you for his calm, for his presence, for his refusal to disappear. A reporter who'd been jogging nearby, drawn by the tension, now stood at the edge of the playground, camera phone in hand. She hadn't planned on filming anything today, but something about the way this man held space, without anger, without apology, compelled her. He noticed but said nothing, because this wasn't about going viral. This was about being seen. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the swings and slide, a park employee arrived. A young man in a Green City Parks vest, clipboard in hand. He looked confused at first, then spoke to a group of parents. Someone called and said there was a disturbance, he said. They pointed to the girl and her father. The employee hesitated, then looked over. The father stepped forward, extended a hand, and introduced himself. There was no disturbance. There was only a man watching over his daughter, and a question hanging in the air, unspoken but felt by everyone. Who gets to belong, and who decides? The young employee nodded slowly, turned to the caller, now shrinking in her seat, and said, "Everything's fine here." But the story still wasn't over. Because sometimes, change doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes, it lingers in the air after the moment passes, waiting for someone else to catch it and carry it forward. As the last of the daylight faded, the playground lights flickered on, casting a soft glow over the scene. The girl was still playing, her cheeks flushed with joy, surrounded now by kids who no longer saw her as different, just as one of them. Her father leaned against a tree, arms folded, finally allowing himself a small smile. The woman in the designer jacket had left, unnoticed. The park employee stayed a while longer, chatting with parents, watching the kids, taking quiet note of what didn't need to be written down. No fights, no complaints, just a peaceful evening, made possible by one man's quiet refusal to be pushed out. Before leaving, the reporter approached the father. "Do you mind if I ask your name?" she said, holding up her phone. This could be an important story. He looked at her, thoughtful, then glanced at his daughter, who was now helping a younger kid onto the swing. "My name doesn't matter," he said gently. "Hers does." He nodded toward his daughter. "Make sure people remember her, what happened to her, and what she did next time she sees someone being left out." The reporter lowered her phone. He walked over, took his daughter's hand, and together they headed home. Back through the park, back through a world still learning how to see clearly. Behind them, the laughter of children echoed like a promise that someday, every child would know they belonged. And no one would ever have to pull up a chair just to prove it.